Good morning. We're about to discuss long division with remainders, which you've seen before, but we're going to be tackling what we do with the remainder a little bit differently. So let's just review for a second right here with part one. Kind of going back to something that you've done before, which is just a really simple little division problem. I want you to think about it like it's a fraction. And if you remember how to convert an improper fraction, where the number on top is bigger than the number on bottom, into a mixed number, where you have a whole number and then a fraction, if you divide 3 into 7, you see that it goes 2 times, and it has 1 left over. So the mixed number is the whole number 2, your remainder 1, over the original denominator, which always stays the same. So 2 1/3 is the same thing as 7 divided by 3, or 7/3. That exact same process is what we're going to apply when we do division problems just with larger divisors. So this rule, let's highlight that. This rule right here, divide and put the remainder over the divisor, is really the only thing different from probably how you worked with your long division previously. Let's scroll down just a little bit. And let's take a look at a bigger problem and just how that answer comes out. So as I noted up here, the answer that I did a second ago was much easier, or a little easier, because the numbers were smaller. But now the division is really, the division's more challenging, but we've already talked about how to do long division in the previous section, but this time we've got a remainder of 15. So when we get this remainder of 15, and over here I just wrote a few little notes about the division if you were confused, but we get 89 and we have a remainder of 15. Really, 89 is not our quotient. Our quotient is the result of the division problem, which we need to incorporate this remainder. So to do that, we're going to write a mixed number, just like we did before. Shift to page 2. So if the original division problem had been expressed, like this, with the larger number on top and the divisor, or the dividend on top and the divisor in the denominator, then we could actually just think of it as converting an improper fraction to a mixed number. Well, we worked the division on the previous page and we got 89, and the 15 left over goes over the divisor, which is your denominator. The denominator always stays the same. So that is actually the same thing as working out this division problem. So whether you think of it as converting an improper fraction to a mixed number, or just in long division, you take the remainder and you put it over the divisor, it's really all the same thing. So I wrote a big note here, kind of the conclusion, which is if you have a remainder in a long division problem, you can express your answer as a mixed number by putting the remainder over the divisor for the fraction part. And that's really it. So we're going to be writing an exact answer for all of our division problems. And I think I would actually, if I were you, I would highlight this part too. So you can write your answer as a mixed number by putting the remainder over the divisor for the fractional part. I want you to avoid going into decimal format right now. We'll get to that a little bit later this year. It's important to be able to use the fraction because it allows you to be able to stop the division a little bit earlier, which you'll find in algebra is a lot more convenient than going into a decimal, which sometimes can keep going and going and going. Just a little quick review right here of our vocabulary. Make sure you know the number you're dividing into is the dividend, the number you're dividing by is the divisor, and your result is the quotient. Those terms are used often, and I want you to make sure you know which is which, especially the dividend and the divisor. All right, let's try some examples. On these examples, I want us to actually work through checking, because of course every division problem can be checked by working backward with multiplication. And since it's pretty easy to make a mistake in long division, this check is actually really important. You can always check using a calculator, but when you're on an assessment in our class, that's not going to be a possibility. So just think of it as a good opportunity to review some basic multiplication. All right, so let's do this long division problem here. I would urge you not to write, oops, got to switch back to the pen. Sorry about that. And actually, let's get rid of that. Okay, appreciate your patience with me when I goof stuff like that up. Okay, come on, pen. It's not wanting to get over here where I want it. Okay, so I would encourage you, gosh almighty, now it's back to doing the highlighter thing. All right, wrong pen. Excuse this technological goof up here. All right, let's try it again. My pen is just not wanting to work. Here we go. I'm going to have to pause for a minute and get this straight. All right, I think I've got it under control now. So I've written the problem out, and I really encourage you to spread out a little bit. You don't want to cram it all together. Let's just start doing some division, which we already know. I'm going to estimate 5 here. I'll come over to the side and do a little scratch work. Remember, if you do scratch work, I want to see it just neatly over to the side. So that's 10, carry the 1, 10, 11, 110. So that looks like a good choice. If you can do the multiplication without doing the scratch work out to the side, that's fine too. Subtract, and we get 9. And then we're going to bring down. Remember, every time you bring down, you have to divide. So 22 into 96 is going to go 4 times. I know 4 times 22 is 88. Subtract, and I will have 8. Bring down my 2. I know it won't go 4 times because 4 times 22 was 88, so it's going to be just smaller than that. 3, that's 66. Subtract, and I get 16. Bring down one last time. Notice how we're lining everything up. And when I get here, I make an estimate. I know 20 will go into 180 6 times. So that's a little smaller than 22. I think since 22 times 5 is 110, I think I'll try 7. Let's see, 7 times 2, 14, carry the 1, that's 154. Yes, that's going to be it. So 7, that's 154. Let's subtract, and we're going to get 9. So previously you would have stopped right there and just said the remainder is 9. The only difference is now, of course, we're going to say our result, or our quotient, for this division problem is 5,437 and 9/22. Because we have a fraction of times that 22 will go in, it won't go into this number evenly again, so we've got this extra little 9/22 left over. So this is our quotient. This whole thing is our quotient. So to check it over here, we'll change colors, we need to multiply 5,437. So I'm just taking the quotient part without the fraction. I'm going to multiply it times my divisor, 22. When I get that result, if I add the remainder on, it should equal my original dividend. So what we're shooting for here is the whole thing should equal this dividend when we're finished. Let's see if I can get back to my pen more successfully this time. So let's multiply right here. Really have to take your time when you're multiplying. So just take a minute on your own to do that, and then come back. Just pause the video. All right. Well, we're back, and I went ahead and I've written out the check, and let's just check your multiplication first. Just look at your first line. Fortunately, this time we were multiplying by 2, so once I got that first line and I put my 0 to start the second one, I know I'm going to have a repeat of these same numbers, so I can save myself a little bit of time. I add carefully, and I get this result right here. 119,614. So then I have to add on my 9, my remainder, and I should get the dividend, and I did. So it matches what we said over here that we should get. So you take part of your quotient, the part without the fraction, multiply by the divisor, take that result and add the remainder, and that should equal your dividend. When you're showing your check on a quiz or a check-in or something like that, you don't have to do this labeling out to the side. I'm just doing that to make it clearer, but of course you can do it also. Let's try the next one. Notice this problem is written a little bit differently. It's just written as a fraction instead of with the division box, or since we've discovered there's not really a rule for that. Some people call it the rooftop. But 229 again is the divisor, goes on the outside. The dividend goes underneath. 501. Make sure you copy it correctly. So it's 150,150, 150,150. Well, now you've got a 3-digit divisor over here. The good news is you'll finish a little bit faster because you don't have to do as many layers, but that initial getting started is a little tougher. So since 229 doesn't go into 150, I'm really looking at this whole number right here, 1,501. So I'm thinking over here, well, I know 200, if I sort of round that times 7, I know that is 1,400, which is pretty close to 1,500. So I think 229, since it's bigger, I'm going to have to multiply. I can't multiply it times 7. I think I'll go over the 1501. So that tells me to take 229. I believe it's going to go 6 times. So I'll multiply that by 6, and that's 54. Carry the 5. 12 plus 5 is 17. Carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. That looks good. So over here, right above the 1, being careful to make sure you put it in the right place, is the 6. I've watched students working some division problems in the past, and they'll have a tendency sometimes to want to write down here before they put anything up here in their quotient. That's a bad idea. Typically they'll forget about it, and then their work will be missing something. So put that first, then think 6 times that is, or times the divisor is this number, and then subtract. Just kind of follow the same steps each time. So when we subtract here, we're going to get 4 from 1. You'll have to borrow. This will become a 9. I hate to mark on these things, but just have to sometimes. The 5 becomes a 4, so now we can make that an 11. So we get our 7, 2, 1. So we have 127. We bring down our 5, and we divide again. We know it's got to be smaller than this. Looks like just one smaller, so I think 5. And again, you can either do the multiplication out here to the side, or if you think you can do it mentally, just looking at it, you can do that as well. But this will be 45. Carry the 4, that's 10 plus 4, 14. Carry the 1, 10. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11, 45. So that goes 5. Oh, sorry. Got ahead of myself a little bit there. We haven't gotten to that part of the problem yet. We're still dividing right here. Okay, so this we were just figuring out what that multiplication was. Now we need to subtract. And when you subtract there, 5 from 5, 0, 4 from 7 is 3, 1 from 2 is 1. Bring down for the very last time. Oh, that looks terrible, doesn't it? Sorry, let me erase that. Try to make that look a little bit better. There we go. And then into 1300. Well, we've already seen over here that when you multiply times 6, you get a little over, so it's going to be another 5. So 5, and that again is 1145. Subtract one more time. 5 from 0 right here. This 0 becomes a 9. This 3 becomes a 2. And this now is a 10. Sorry, that looks so terrible. That's a 5, and that's a 1. 155. You know, I always double check every time I subtract to make sure that what I've subtracted should be smaller than my divisor. If it isn't, you know you've underestimated how many times it will divide into it up here. So this is my remainder. So I've got 655. Got my fraction bar. The remainder is 155. The divisor is 229. Sometimes this fraction that's part of your quotient will simplify, but until we talk about fractions, I've limited your problems to where you don't have any, you shouldn't interact with one where the fraction will simplify. But you know, if we do, we do. Most of you know how to simplify fractions, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. That's not really the purpose of this lesson. The purpose of this lesson is division. So to check, and I'd just like for you to check it on your own. Remember, you're going to take 655, multiply times 229, pretty big division, and then add on your 155, and you should get your original, your dividend, which is 150,150. You can check your check to this problem by using the key that's posted. Enjoy division.